Hello, everyone. The College Board recently publicly released the free response questions for the 2022 AP US History exam. If you want to see the document itself and the link to the document, I put all that information below. Also, now that it is publicly available, we can discuss it without breaking any rules. So let's first take a look at the DBQ, and later on, I will post videos for the LEQs and SAQs. A quick disclaimer, this may not be your DBQ. There are multiple versions of the exam. However, the version that the College Board releases is usually the version that most students received. Okay, let's first take a look at the prompt itself. And I must say, I thought this prompt and the documents were definitely on the harder end of College Board DBQs I've seen over the years. So the prompt is evaluate the extent to which the United States developed a national identity between 1800 and 1855. At first glance, what I notice is the prompt focuses on one of the seven themes of APUSH, identity. I think this is the most subjective theme, and a very hard one to discuss in a timed essay format. The College Board defines identity as how and why definitions of American and national identity and values have developed among the diverse and changing population of North America, as well as on related topics such as citizenship, constitution, constitutionalism, foreign policy, assimilation, and American exceptionalism. Most students start their essays out with contextualization, so let's begin our analysis there. With contextualization, you want to discuss broader developments that relate to the topic of the prompt. Technically, it can be done before, during, or after the prompt, but I like to focus on immediately before the time period and a little bit into the time period of the prompt. So here's what I first thought of as good context. Keep in mind that you could definitely have other evidence for context than what I have here. So I went as far back as the Revolutionary time period and those Enlightenment ideals present in the Declaration of Independence. Then continuing on discussion of how those ideals were seen in the first national government, the Articles of Confederation. And then I think a great discussion around the topic of identity could have been had with the debates around the Constitution as the founding fathers were trying to define what type of new nation this would be. A loose organization of independent states or a country with a strong centralized government. Also, bringing up the fairly limited amount of democracy in the Constitution and the property right restrictions on voting that many states imposed would be great context. This same discussion could also carry on to the first party system, with a split between the Jeffersonian Republicans, who believed in a yeoman farmer republic, versus the Hamiltonian Federalists and their support for a more centralized and bureaucratic government. Then there could also have been a lot of evidence that would work for context in the time period, but some of the major topics could possibly be the Second Great Awakening, the Revolution of 1800, the Second Party System, and the growth of slavery. Turning to the thesis now, you had to make an argument based upon the prompt. Another way to think about and evaluate to extent style prompt is to ask how much or how great of an influence, change, or effect occurred. In this case, how much of a national identity developed in the time period. To answer this, you need to think about the evidence, especially from the docs. Where does that lead you to? Do they make a strong or weak case for the development of a national identity? Your reasons or main points should have been born out of what you think the docs and your background knowledge says about the topic. An example thesis might look something like this. During the time period 1800 to 1855, the United States developed a strong national identity due to reform movements, economic links between regions, and the development of a coherent foreign policy. All right, let's now get into those documents. For the first document, we have a map showing the gradual elimination of property requirements for voting. I think this is the most straightforward document of all of them. It shows the expansion of democracy, and there's a lot of great context a student could use with this document, including the era of the common man or the Jacksonian era. It shows an aspect of identity related to the increased participation in the democratic process. The second document is about identity, but through the lens of foreign policy, or threat from a foreign force. In this case, it is the beginning of the War of 1812, started partly due to the impressment of American sailors, in which the document alludes to. This committee reports discusses the American mood towards conflict with Britain. It does not specifically mention it, but I think the goal was to find out if most Americans, who may not be personally affected by the issues between the US and Great Britain, are they still thus angered by those British actions? Do they care about national honor and prestige? The report says yes, they do. So it is supportive of national identity. There could definitely be a counter argument or piece of context with this that would undermine this report, which would be the Hartford Convention. That would help a student work their way towards the complexity point. The next document is from President James Madison, who is making a very Henry Clay type argument about the importance of physically connecting the country through canals and roads. He says it is a proper role for the national government to engage in that type of interstate projects because it will be popular with the people and will strengthen the country politically. And those physical links would further advance the process of the shift in mindset away from regional interests and identities toward a more national, interconnected country. There is a lot of different context that could be brought in here, including a little later, Clay's American System, A student could also discuss those like Andrew Jackson, who are against these ideas for various reasons, including holding on to the Jeffersonian yeoman farmer ideal. The next document I found to be kind of a curious one as to how to apply it to an argument that would fit in with the rest of an essay. It is from the Constitution of the Cherokee, which you can see in the first part borrows heavily from the US Constitution. The second part is saying that the Cherokee are not to give up their lands in the United States, so setting themselves apart from the United States. This is a hard document, though, as Native American nations have been in a legal gray area for all of the history of the United States, sometimes treated as separate political entities from the United States perspective. However, they are also within the United States borders. I think with this document, you need to bring in outside information to help with your analysis and usage of it. So, discussing things around how the Cherokee were treated in that time period, and that most American citizens and politicians did not see Native Americans as US citizens or with the same identity as American citizens. And natives also reciprocated that feeling as seen in the document. Okay, on to document 5, where we have a speech by a free African American woman to the New England Anti Slavery Society. First, let's look at just the main ideas of the document itself. The speaker is inspired by the American ideals of rights and privileges. However, even as a free black, she only has a second class citizen with few opportunities. However, she does think that righteous struggle will lead to positive reform. This links to how the ideals that the United States was founded upon lead to reform activities that strive for freedom and equality for all, and that within America, there is hope for minorities that they will eventually be seen as an equal part of society and a part of American identity. Next, we have the transcendentalist author Ralph Waldo Emerson, the American literary figure of individualism and self reliance. In this excerpt, Emerson is discussing that Americans, apart from Europeans, have their own ideas of the importance of individualism, and that they are shaking off bad European ideas of inherited status and subservience. Those European ideas still have left a residual or polluted imprint on the American mindset. However, the cure is to be completely based on the American identity around self reliance, self improvement, and individualism. The last document is from a reverend, and it is towards the end of the time period of the prompt. Now, even though the author of the document is a reverend, he is not really talking about religious matters. More so, he is discussing gender differences, and that women have the ability or capacity to be as intelligent as men. This is another document in which I feel that you need some historical context to be able to use it well to support an argument. Some places where this document would fit into are the Second Great Awakening and reform movements, also with the roles of women, including Republican motherhood and the more radical Declaration of Sentiments. Finally, some pieces of outside evidence, which would be evidence that is not linked to any of the documents at all, and it could go towards aiding an argument. So you couldn't use any of these things if you're using them as context for a document, but if you separated this out, you used it by itself, and it supported your argument, then it would count for that one outside evidence point. And any of these things would work. A few things that I thought of that could have been weaved nicely into an essay are Clay's American System, the Market Revolution, the Monroe Doctrine, Andrew Jackson's electoral victory, and the era of the common man. And finally, one that I think would have been a great fit and wasn't really in any of the documents at all is Manifest Destiny. And along with that, it's kind of the American frontier identity. Okay, everyone, that is my analysis of the 2022 APUSH DBQ. My analysis is definitely not perfect. I'm sure I missed a lot of different things you could have used as outside evidence or context and different ways you could have used the documents as well. If you remember what you put in your essay and you want to leave a question about it, drop in a comment below and I'll try to get to them. Also, I will make a video too about the LEQs and the SAQs, and I'll get those out as soon as possible. See you guys later.